Hey, it's the Right Rican, and today I have Cory from the Nature. I knew I was gonna mess it up anyway. The question, the nature, nature is the
The
question.
answer.
The answer.
The
Sorry, no, not the answer. There we go. I knew I was gonna mess it up because I have so many. We
No,
already
it's
had
all
that
good.
conversation for an hour, so my brain is already like.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like, what's going on?
Uh, so yeah, so Cory, I'll let you introduce my. So you could introduce yourself to my followers.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Cory Endrulat. Funny enough, I actually live in the same area as the Right Rican. I'm like, holy cow, all this time we're right next door to each other, which is
Yeah.
pretty awesome. So we'll probably maybe do more collaborations in the future. We'll see. But
Mhm.
I'm glad to have met the Right Rican. He's a really cool guy, from what I know. And I met a friend of his who showed me about his channel, and I saw he's producing content on the daily to weekly, which is incredible, especially for a time such as now where people may need to speak up about what's going on because we see there's so many things happening. It's good to at least get something out there and to do our best to try to wake people up, perhaps, to what's going on and to realizing, well, maybe the world, isn't what we, thought it was, or there's problems that we allowed happen and we need to fix it, or we need to pay more attention to certain issues. Like all that I think is great, and I think it's awesome that the Right Rican is putting his contribution into the work that I'm trying to also do. I'm trying to bring awareness to stuff that is here, universal, what is happening in the world. I don't go over necessarily daily news per se, but I do like to explore those big ideas that the Right Rican goes over. And I've already had some great conversations with them. We already did a show on my channel called You Are the Question. You can check that out if you'd like. My channels is Cory, Nature's the Answer. I have a ton of content. I'm going to network with hundreds of other natural law teachers from around the world. That is one of the topics I specialize in, I guess you can say. And that network is called onegreatworknetwork.com, because this is one great work of bringing education, knowledge to people, especially in a time where people are either ignorant of that knowledge or they're being fed wrong forms of knowledge and it's deceiving them or keeping them in the dark. And instead, I want to empower people so they can have the power in their hands, the knowledge as power, so they can take control of their lives, take back their health, take back their rights, so they can have true freedom.
Interesting. So what I want to start with, so how did you how when did you start with this? What was your awakening moment?
So yeah, I get asked that question a lot, especially I guess being 20. But like I don't see age as a factor that much. I was just always very curious. Now a lot of people who tend to get into this knowledge and they see what's happening in the world, a lot of them I think have experiences that led them up to that event, where it's like they had some sort of bad thing happen to them or some sort of wake up call. Luckily, I didn't have anything that was really harmful to me or anything that was really dramatic that caused me to come to my realizations. I was just super curious. And I did, however, get always kind of disturbed by looking at my fellow generation. This generation that I'm in, there's a lot of people who might have depression or anxiety, mental impairments, and there's the growing evidence of disease happening in the world, especially in America. And a lot of those things always concerned me. And I got into health first. I researched ingredients, then I went into nutrition. And then from nutrition, I realized how much the pharmaceutical companies were affecting health. And then I'm like, okay, I don't want to get political, but it looks like I have no choice, especially since I, went, became a health coach in 2018 under the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I realized how much insurance companies were holding people back, how much natural medicine is not patented, and there's really, it's not encouraged by the medical establishment, the allopathic traditional medicine that MDs or traditional doctors are taught. And there's a
Or
lot of
like
medicine
I
that is
usually
being
refer to that.
suppressed.
I
Yeah.
usually refer to it as the
Yeah.
Western medicine because that's
Right.
where usually people refer to it as versus like the holistic approach where
I
um
think it's just, I like to say maybe just allopathic, because Western medicine, all medicine of the world was very all about natural medicine. Natural medicine has been used for thousands of years. The father of Western medicine, Hippocrates, I mean, he was major into natural medicine. So I know I agree. I use the term Western all the time,
Okay.
but I think maybe just to be more specific for now, maybe I could use allopathic only because now I'm looking at a specific branch of doctorates where they're not taught about nutrition. They're not taught about natural cures. And if anything, you know, they're taught about how to make money on pharmaceuticals and you know, they're not seeing the other options that are available, and oftentimes the patients or the clients have to look into those options for themselves, and then they get confused and they don't know what to do, and then the establishment pressures them. So there's a lot of things going on, and that's why I'm writing a health book. That's why, you know, I focus on mainly nutrition because I see it as the most essential. When it comes to more complex stuff, I recommend people look at like naturopathic physicians or functional medicine practitioners, which you can, you know, find in your area. But when it comes to natural law, I see it as even more important than medicine as I've grown in my knowledge, because now we're looking at not just healing the body, but healing the mind and thus healing the world, and thus actually reducing overall disease in the population as a whole. And I even made a page on my movement's website, nita.one/health. And you'll see I made a call to action for health practitioners to help them understand natural law through their perspective.
Well, that's interesting. That's one of, it's funny how you said about the tragic, you know, because usually, because that's actually how I kind of got woken up, uh, you know, changed my political philosophy was, you know, 9/11 happened.
Mm.
You know, when you say you're 20, so when 9/11 happened, I was, yeah, 20.
I was one.
You were one. I was 20. Uh, and so when it happened, you know, it blew my mind. Like, I started looking into Islam,
Mm,
just to seeing. I'm like, what's in there that made them want to attack us?
right.
You know, and then, you know, seeing all the complexities of um, actions that we've taken in the Middle East, and um, you know, then I remember believing different conspiracy theories because, you know, you go down one rabbit hole, you keep
Oh, of
going into
course.
different rabbit
Yeah.
hole, and then finally it's when I ending of rabbit hole was when I got introduced to Ron Paul, like we spoke about earlier,
Yeah.
and that's when, you know, I finally got, you know, started getting rid of my Democrat left leaning thoughts and started,
Mm,
you know, that's when I first got introduced to like the non-aggression principle, and I got
yeah.
introduced to more libertarian ideas because, you know, freedom is attractive, and I don't, you
Hmm.
know, people um don't, I don't think realize how attractive freedom is, and real freedom, not what we think freedom is in this country nowadays, because freedom nowadays is what the government tells us we could do, and it's like, you know,
Right.
I know, you know, why don't you share your views about that? I know, you know, I
Sure.
don't want to hog
Yeah,
up.
no problem. Yeah, no problem. I mean, look, I think we all had some sort of awakenings, whether we want to admit it or not, that help us see any form of knowledge in our life. There's a reason why we're all, you know, seeking out this knowledge, why we have it, and they're actually more similar than we think. You know, I saw a YouTuber one time. His name is High Impact Flicks. I'm going to collaborate with him sometime. He's a very big YouTuber, but he creates a lot of impact on the daily, and he asks questions about the legitimacy in this authority figures that we talk about, you know, with government and man's law and these politicians. And ever since, you know, that first video that I watched from him where he asked questions, I couldn't wrap my head around it because I was very obedient, and I still am, you know, to my parents. I'm saying like I've always paid attention to authority, you know, whatever authority it was, I was always giving my allegiance to it. And in school, they teach you from a very young age to be very obedient. So I always saw obedience as that form of morality. Well, it turns out, you know, legality is not morality. You know, morality is something that we can actually learn from nature, from ourselves. We know instinctually we shouldn't harm somebody else. We shouldn't steal from other people. Most people generally know this, but when we look at some more abstract ideas, we don't realize that we're actually contributing to those as well and contributing to some wrongdoings. So I think it is my moral obligation to bring knowledge that people don't have or they don't see or that is kept away from them purposely, so people cannot, like I said earlier, so people can be empowered, so they cannot be deceived, so they can free their minds, and then essentially their actions will follow. But that's why I always focus on education, and all the material we do is about sharing it with other people and encouraging other people to look into it for themselves, because I can't be the one to tell you what to think. I don't want to tell you what to think. I want you to look into it all for yourself. And I always encourage that, especially if we're looking at something that's universal and all around us. Now, you asked about freedom. I mentioned to you earlier, there's something called the law of freedom. So as morality increases, freedom increases. As freedom increases, morality increases. That's where the importance of learning natural law and natural rights comes into play, because once we know our rights, we won't lose them. And so that's why I spread the knowledge that we do. And that's how we understand true freedom as well. And I told you as well, in our show, we talked about freedom, how it's really limitless possibility, what true freedom is. The ability to choose, and what to do with our own lives. It's to use our own conscience. It's to be truly sovereign. What we call it is internal monarchy. Internal monarchy. Mono is in one, archon as in ruler. So you rule yourself, internal monarchy. And external anarchy represents freedom, because externally you're without a ruler, and internally you rule yourself. And that is what we call sovereignty for internal monarchy and freedom for external anarchy, by definition of their words. And a lot of people perceive anarchy as chaos when it actually is freedom. And to see freedom as chaos when it may actually be the exact opposite shows perhaps the deceit that has gone on in this world. But when I don't use the word anarchy or anarchist that often, because I think it's a misrepresentation of the ideas I'm trying to bring to people, which is simply like, wake up, this is just nature. This is just beings, human beings, and in a world of possibility. And that possibility includes chaos. Freedom includes chaos. And we need to learn to embrace that and accept that and face our fears, be courageous, especially in a time such as now, where we might not want to speak up. We always need to fight for the truth. And the truth is objective. It's something that we learn of the past. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from the chaos. We can understand truth even more, especially now in the modern day and age. We can look back at history, see what happened in World War II. There's a lot that we can do. And this sets the premises for the discussions that we have today for freedom, and to realizing, well, where does it go wrong? How come all these nations that claim to be super moral, that claim to have a constitution, that we should uphold them, that claim that they're for the people, by the people, yet always seem to do the exact opposite every time they rise, and they always fall, and then they keep rising again because people still believe in the legitimacy of those systems to begin with. So I know I'm mentioning so many different topics right now, but this is all just to help get people thinking. Because if I can do anything, my hopes on your show especially is just to help people think. That is the main goal of my work. So I don't expect people to agree with me. As long as they're thinking and they can, question things they never questioned before, I think then we can innovate, because we're challenging our current belief systems and asking myself, am I wrong? Or do I make an apology, like Apollo G, it's like the NASA space missions and stuff. There's a reason why they name it that, but like logi comes from the word logos, which means word. And we're looking at the word of God. We need to return our word to God, to nature, and stay true to the truth. We have to fight for it, but literally, if it may come to it, defending ourselves, and mentally by sharing it with other people, so we can live in alignment with one another and to the law.
So since we were talking about that, since you're talking about natural law and you're talking about the anarchy or anarchy,
Sure.
like, so it must annoy you, like when you watch the news or something like that, and they refer to groups, like say like what's going on in Portland, they refer to them as anarchists, and it's like that must really irk you.
Well, only because those people in those groups, they can't define anarchy themselves. I mean, they don't even know what it means. And most of them are socialist communists who just want to cause a bunch of chaos in the world, who want to just steal things from other people. The exact opposite of what a real anarchist would be, which is acts upon principle and realizing non-aggression, like you mentioned, and the idea of self-defense, and what real freedom is, which is to own ourselves, like you do, as you do by natural law, knowing your rights. So there is a big difference, between these people who call themselves anarchists or use, like wearing black and looking like thugs, and acting as thugs, and just using that as a scapegoat for their communism, socialism, because they're against the system, versus people who are actually anarchons, which is no rulers.
Mhm.
We promote a society of sovereign beings where, you know, I rule myself. Why do I need some sort of external ruler? You know, unless I'm making that voluntary interaction, it's not true. It's not true freedom.
Oh yeah, that's why I wanted. That's why I brought it up, because I know from our conversation earlier, that's something
Yeah.
that even though I'm not I'm not an anarchist, or I think that when they call them on the news anarchists, it annoys me too, and I don't even
Mm.
subscribe to all of it, because
It's a
it's like,
Greek word. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's just the fact that these people, like you said, they're communists, they're socialists, they they manipulate words because they call themselves Antifa, anti-fascist.
Yeah, they're
And
the
the
ones being
irony,
it.
and the irony behind it is, what are they doing? But their tactics are fascist. So it's like they're
Mhm.
not anti-fascist, they're really fascist.
But again,
There's
because they can't define what fascism is, you know, they're being
exactly.
taught what the schools are teaching them and what the media is showing them, and what the movies are showing. And it's all this, it all actually keeps them obedient and into and playing into the system. I mean,
Irony of it. That
there is a strong irony because there's a lack of knowledge behind their actions, and that's why they're doing the actions that they're doing. They don't realize that it is wrong, that it's actually hurting people, or that they think it's justifiable in their own head. They think,
Mhm.
you know, more relativist notion, they can make things right by, you know, pushing wrong things onto other people, or that wrong things can be right. Oh, I'll use this violence. Oh, I'll steal from this person. It's not going to do anything. They don't see the impact in their actions, and thus, you know, they're not even close to understanding natural law. You know, like I said to you, it's one to know the truth and another to act on behalf of it. These people are not even close to step one. It's like they're ignorant. If I maybe talk to some of them, and I'd like to, um, you know, if they're going to jump to violence and they're not going to jump to conversation and sharing ideas, I mean, that's not somebody, you know, I want anybody to be in charge of anything. You know, a real leader is somebody who talks and shares ideas with other people. You know, maybe doesn't push certain things on other people, lets things go out naturally, that people like them, and their ideas are shared, you know, through conversation. I mean, how do you expect to change the world through violence? Like, how is that really going to achieve your means? Some people feel like they can just take up arms to the state and you know, just end the system by
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, no,
If that's an anarchist who believes that they can end the system by taking up arms to the state, they're completely wrong.
I mean, yeah, it's like, they talk about January 6th a lot, and they call it, I refuse to call it an insurrection, because, it's like, if people really thought that going into the Capitol and they were going to, take over the government, those are a bunch of idiots. you know, to me, that's just dumb. So, when
Yeah.
they stress, like, when the news keeps talking about that happened, and I'm like, no, look, you had a bunch of idiots who just went into the Capitol, not realizing that they just made things worse for everybody. Not
Right.
just, and the irony is, it's not just the people on the right, it's because that now the people on the left get to use it as a weapon to
Hmm.
go, oh, us free thinkers, you people, you're in a cult because you,
Right.
like, no, look, listen, not everybody who, let's say, voted for Trump or votes Republican believes what those people believe. As much as, like, people make a big deal about, like, QAnon, it's like, you have the Blue Anon people. I call them Blue Anon, and other people call them Blue Anon, because they believe crazy conspiracies on the left.
Yeah.
And they just, they eat it up. And, like, we are talking with the anarchists, they think that they're doing, they're or the Antifa in like, I say Portland because that's where they, they've been around there since even, like the 90s. I remember, I know you weren't born, but in the 90s they did the in Seattle, they had what was that, not the G7. They had one of those economic conferences in Seattle.
Occupy Wall Street. Who knows?
No, Occupy Wall Street
That
was
was later on.
in
Yeah.
the 2011, I think, like 2010.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, it was one of those World Economic Conferences. I forget the name off the top of my head, but I remember as a kid seeing that on the news, and seeing these people dressed like the Antifa people are dressed now, and just like you said, creating chaos. They weren't, it's not that they had any real beliefs. They just want to see the world burn. It's like the Joker.
Unfortunately, though, I mean, that's the thing, though. They're living their life by beliefs. I mean, they don't have a firm, grounded principle of grounded understanding for themselves, oftentimes. And that's why when you talk to them, they might not really have a exact position on things, or they're just talking what other people told them. And that's why I encourage people to learn for themselves. But these people are often doing violent things out of insecurities within themselves, deeper psychological problems that they have, where they lack the security internally, and so they take it out on people externally, and then they actually, in a way, they seek control. Even though it seems like they're lawless and they're crazy. I mean, that's why they want it. If they were truly sovereign and realized the power for themselves, they wouldn't take up arms and go kill other people. They would simply live their lives and, defend their own property, and they wouldn't fringe on other people's property. But because these people have such a insecurity within themselves, they want to take it out on other people, and because they lack certain aspects within their own life, and that's why they also want to resort to stealing, and they
Well,
feel
it's
like it
also
is
because they don't
justified.
believe, they don't believe in private property.
Mhm.
That's, like you said, communist socialist. They don't believe that, people should have property. And it's like, then where are you going to live?
Well, this is where the golden rule comes in, right? Like, what would you want done unto you? If
Hmm.
everybody has their forms of property, would you like somebody else stealing something from you, right? So
Hmm.
that's where I guess the non-aggression principle comes in, where it's like, I won't harm you, you won't harm me, and then also the self-defense, which recognizes like, yeah, we'll defend ourselves, and that is always justified, even with any amount of force necessary in order to defend
Hmm.
ourselves. Because if you look at the founding fathers, they had to sometimes kill the crown or people who were upholding the crown in order to free themselves. If you look at the slaves, they had to sometimes kill their slave owners in order to free themselves. They didn't maybe want to, but they had to, for the sake of their own freedom, unfortunately, kill those people who
Hmm.
were upholding those
Oh
institutions
man,
for their own freedom.
I wish you could show that the slide that you showed with the violence versus
Of course,
force,
yeah.
because that was a really good slide. I really enjoyed that one because it was like, yeah, okay, now, yeah, we use them interchangeably, but there's a big difference in thinking force versus violence, and I
Right.
enjoyed that. That slide stood out to me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good knowledge out there if you seek it, Mike. And it's not just from the internet. I encourage people, like I said, to look for these laws within their own life, and to really use common sense, because this stuff should not be far from common sense. It should be stuff that we should generally understand within our own life. Like, yeah, we shouldn't harm somebody. Yeah, we shouldn't steal from somebody. We should care for one another. These are things that are common sense. And when people first learn about natural law, some of the first reactions I get are like, I already know all this stuff. Why do I need to know about it? Well, the reason why is because if you learn more about it, you understand, well, statism and some of the more deeper ideas that you never actually considered in your life. Like, should you be upholding a system that is entirely based on a monopoly of violence? Um, and every form of government is that monopoly of violence. And if there isn't, I would like to know, the only form of government I know that is actually realistic is self-government, because self-government, you're in control of your own body. Governmental, mind control, you are in control of your own mind if it's self-governance. And by self-governance, I don't mean democracy where it's majority rule either.
Hmm.
I'm not about pushing one person's belief over other people. Even if 99% of everybody agrees and 1% disagrees, it shouldn't be pushed onto that 1%. Everybody should be sovereign beings and in control of their own life, and they could still get everything done. Again, it's like the same excuses made for slavery, the same made for government, who will pick the cotton. What if we're freed and all the slaves go crazy? Every excuse is the same. Slavery is natural. Government is natural. It's been around for thousands of years. I guess we should just keep it along. But see, as moral human beings, and what we did to end physical slavery in the past was recognize that these slaves were just like us. They were human beings, and they were not some special thing that were inferior to us. They're like our fellow human beings. Now we're all equal. We recognized human rights in that moment. Same thing with the foundation of America. We recognized human rights when we went away from the crown, but we need to now take the next step toward humanity's evolution to realizing the full self-ownership, which is, self-ownership is self-mastery. It's sovereignty. It's It's realizing that, you're not a slave. That's essentially what it means. A super reign. That's what the word sovereign comes from. And I say super because the word uh, B in government is like a V. And so in Latin, it's just how the language works. But super means above reign, which is rulership. So above rulership, you are above their rulership. You own yourself. And if you just break down the words too, you'll learn a lot about what's going on. Like I mentioned government. And I use the word statism to represent somebody's belief in authority, that somebody has the legitimate right to rule over them, that it's vested in certain individuals. That's what I mean when I use the word status, because if you look up the word status, you might get, well, somebody who just promotes an establishment, but it's the very existence of the establishment that is at question. And that is that's what you're upholding if you are a quote unquote statist. And we were all there. Every human being was basically a statist before an anarchist. And usually we go through some sort of this transition. We go from conservative or leftist to libertarian to minarchist to anarchist. That's sort of the transition stage that human beings come into when they recognize more of their sovereignty and their rights.
So minarchist?
Minarchist means limited government. You believe that government should be
Okay.
small, and there should be a perfect balance between this sort of master-slave dynamic. Whereas I'm saying this is wrong inherently, and thus it could be done away with if we have the knowledge to do so. And it's actually quite simple. We live our lives as we do, but we're not forced to pay taxes that we don't want to pay. We're voluntary getting things done. In fact, because things are more community-based, such as police, you can still have policing. There's still going to be law firms or whatever, security agencies. People will build roads as they need them. It's like saying again, who will pick the cotton? And because we have principles deciding this, and because everybody has this knowledge, government really can't rise again at that point in time. So I look toward a future with all this, and I talk about all this on my channel because I might be very abstract for some of your listeners, and I understand that. But like I have videos talking about limited government. I have videos talking about 144 proofs that government doesn't even exist.
So let me ask you. So then what would be the difference from would you think is the difference between, let's say, like the mini anarchists versus a conservative? Because conservatives say they're for limited government. What would you say is the distinction between the two terms?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of different sectors of conservatism. I mean, it's changed over the years. You've had like Bush conservatism in the 2000s, and now you have like more of a Trump conservatism, which is more like populism, which I used to identify as in 2016 before now everyone starts using the word populist. Now, I was like, hey, I was using that term first. But yeah. So what was your question? You're saying like, what's the difference between minarchist and conservatism, or like today's conservatism? Yeah. I think that's a good question because a lot of people generally want small government. I think it's like intrinsic to our human nature when we understand the nature of government. Moreover, that we want a limited government or small government, and we believe that it will work. We don't know for a fact if it'll work, and that's what the founding fathers did. For example, is everybody thinks that everything they made was like some sort of perfect blueprint, and let's just say, man can't really make anything perfect, as you and I talked about on my show. Mm-hmm. We have to learn from the past and move forward for the future. So although they did recognize certain things that we need to recognize again, no doubt about it, the practice to which they still did things was still the government, still allowing, Congress to tax the population, still allowing certain people to rule over people, and the people thinking that those people are legitimate to do so. That's what matters. It's not the 100 people in power. It's actually the millions of people who follow them. Hitler wouldn't be in power himself. He can't do it without the millions of people that follow him. Same thing with any communist country back in World War II, which resulted in even more death, if anything. And
well, you get the term
democide.
Huh?
Democide, which is death by government.
There you go, death by government.
And that's the number one cause of unnatural death. I mean, you want to compare private murder versus death by government. I mean, government deaths are skyrocketing, over 286 million in just World War II alone. And I mean, far more than that if you go back in history. But everything was...
Yeah, the 20th century was the worst. That was the number one cause of death in the 20th century was democide.
And that's why I'm pretty serious about this at times, and I get a little like passionate. Sometimes I, could get fired up. Some people get very angry when they talk about the stuff because they, especially if people won't listen to them, or they're ignorant and they don't want to hear about it at all, because we're talking about slavery. We're talking about some really deep psychological stuff that we have to get past ourselves. And at the time of physical slavery, it was hard for so many people to come to terms with the fact, like, what am I going to do without my slave and doing everything? But actually, society worked somewhat better without that system in place. And that's what I'm saying as well, is actually, security will work better without this system in place, because people are all going to jump to get their own guns. Everybody's going to defend themselves.
Hmm.
Everybody's going to be more in control of their own lives. They're going to pay attention to what they eat, because now they feel like they have to be responsible for
Hmm.
themselves. Everything actually really falls into place with freedom. And I've been stressing that to people, because it's like, it's actually the exact opposite of what you think. Human beings are very smart. I actually don't discredit human beings. I know that there's a lot of bad people in the world, but we're looking at here what's reducing the harm in the world as a whole. We're looking at what's reducing the amount of bad people in the world as a whole.
Hmm.
And if you ask me, a lot of the bad people we see in the world are those who seek power, those who seek
Yes.
government. And they, who actively wants to do that? I asked an average person who cares about liberty and these ideas, and they don't want to rule over their fellow men. They just want to live their lives, and that's why they want to be free.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to me to see this dynamic that we've had in society for quite a long time. But to be honest, even with that, humanity has been around even longer, and we haven't even been around that long.
No.
But
Mhm.
we come to understand things more as time progresses, the nature of ourselves, the nature of government in our world. And that's why I say that nature is the answer, because when we have knowledge of who we are, then we have knowledge of what our actions entail. What is it going to do to the world around us? And so when we can prevent millions of deaths by democide, that is a very big thing for me. That's why I teach this knowledge. It's like, hey, look, we can save lives. It's not even like we're changing the world. We're saving and changing the world from potential problems that are catastrophic.
No, yeah, no, um, when it comes to government, like, with our conversation earlier, for me, that's why I'm with the whole limited government, and people don't understand that in the practicality, because they're used to the government providing everything for them. The government says you have a right to this. The government says you have a right to that. And I try to explain this to my friends, especially when I first started this channel, which I wanted to wake up, um, Latinos and Black people to go, look, listen, um we don't have to be leftists, we don't have to be those type, you know look and see that we're more conservative, and like, you're saying how conservatively could lead to the minarchy than to anarchy.
Mhm.
um
Well, we go
and
through those phases within ourselves, right? Like we
yeah.
identify as that, and then as our understandings improve, we if we seek to improve, that being a
Mhm.
big thing, because we can stay in our echo chamber, we could stay in playing the sports game of politics because it's fun or whatever all we
Yeah, I
want.
know,
But
that's
if
right.
we
I mean, I laugh because Trump's not in office anymore,
Mhm.
but you'll see like people on the left, oh, you Trumpers, or oh, if Trump said this and Trump, I'm like, Trump's not in office anymore,
Poor
but you
guy
guys
is
keep
like
you guys
he could
keep talking about him. It's like, yes, there's going to be people that obsess over him, but at the same time, there's going to be other people who just liked stuff that he stood for. It was his policies. It wasn't him as a person. It was maybe sometimes his personality, because maybe people
yes,
wanted
big time.
people to fight back. Because the whole thing about it is like, people always said Republicans are spineless, and Trump dispelled that notion of
Mhm.
the spineless Republican.
He
Because
was
it's like,
human.
yeah, it was like, you're gonna say something stupid to me, I'm going to answer you right back with the same sort of vitriol. And it's like,
Yeah.
it was his greatest strength, but also his greatest flaw, because
Well, it's I don't see it as flawed, but like when he lets other people pressure him into not being who he is internally, and to not being genuine and having fun and making fun of other people, if that's the
uh-huh.
case, like that's what made him entertainable. And people like that because he was human. That, like, again, I say nature is the answer.
Mhm.
That was the reason why he appealed to people. And I'm sorry, but those are also the leaders who will deceive the people the most, because they look as if they are like one of us. And
Yes.
that, so we look up to them, we say, well, they're like one of us, and so we should vote them in. We got to be careful with that too. So like,
Oh
I
yeah.
woke up to this as well. I didn't even know Trump was funded by people like Sheldon Adelson and a lot of the Israeli side of news. But regardless of that, I don't care where people stand in that. I want to look at the fundamental principles of what this system is as a whole. And that's what I look at. But Trump, I mean, like, poor guy, just let him live his life. At this point, like, I'm just saying, like, with everybody in life, why do we put them on pedestals and see them as celebrities, and have to talk about them, assess ourselves over them all day?
I
Why can't they just be fellow human beings? He's a fun guy. I mean, nobody should really run for office or seek power, but he was genuine by the way he expressed himself. I don't know him as a person personally, but
No,
like,
me neither.
but I
I mean,
have
it
his.
was the reason why I voted for him, because I was like, you're talking about a guy that didn't need to run, and that was my appeal for him, because it
Yeah,
was
I knew a lot about Trump in 2016. You asked me, I would know everything about him because I supported them at the time,
well,
but that's
that
because I
was
was a
my
statist.
appeal, was because the fact that he didn't, um like I said, he didn't need it. Like, you had these, like, you had the Clintons and the Bushes, they live for government. That's, I mean, one of the things in 2016, I couldn't bring myself, like, for me, the two no's in 2016, because since I since I consider myself more libertarian, I didn't stick to one political party. No, on the Democrat side was Clinton, and no, on the Republican side was Bush. So it's like, I remember in 2016 for the Democrats, um, oh, I forget the guy's name now.
Lesser of two evils, though, for
Yeah,
sure.
no, I know lesser of two evils, but you still
But it
get evil.
always is like that, and
No,
like,
it is. It
and
is.
and and Trump helped bring new people into politics, which is, not going to lie, what the social engineers of the world want, because it allows people to stay in this game of statism. And he was a statist for believing in the need for masters and slaves himself. So, that's where I say and draw the line and say, well, he shouldn't be in power. But I think the guy should just live his life. People should leave him alone, and he should go about doing what he's good at, with his businesses and stuff like that. Let him do his own thing. But does anybody deserve to be in a place of power? First of all, no. So is it solely his responsibility to solve the nation, to bring it back to its knees, and to revive everything? No, it is actually our responsibility. It's our nation, it's our world,
Mhm.
and we need to take care of it. We need to be in charge of it. We need to stop pointing fingers and saying, well, you can do it, and it's not me, I didn't do it, but you
Mhm.
can do it. And then also, staying, like I said, in our echo chambers. And if I ask someone, do you want to be the change, they won't
Mhm.
raise their hand. But if I ask them, do you want change, everyone will raise their hand,
Mhm.
because no one wants to be the change themselves and take personal responsibility. But unfortunately, in order to actually free ourselves from slavery in the system, that's why it's called the one great work.
Mhm.
We need to do this internal process for ourselves and share it with others, no matter how hard it takes to bring it out to people.
And that's why I go. Um, your most important politics is local, because at the end of the day, like, if you could get a community of like-minded people, like you're talking about, then that change could be local, where you
Oh, for
don't
sure.
have, you could do, you could work that stuff in a smaller community and then expand it.
People ask, like, how are you going to create this world? It's actually quite simple. I mean, you have one neighborhood or one town understand
Mhm.
some of this knowledge, and they generally don't want to pay taxes, at least multiple people at a time, or they just want to stop doing something that complies to the system. And now the government feels like they have to unleash their armed guard to try to imprison these people or
Mhm.
put them in jail. But now what does that do? The media gets on the attention, it creates a big demonstration in the nation and the world, and that is a sign right there of government tyranny, going infringing on people's lives and saying, well, you need to pay or else you are going to be imprisoned. And eventually maybe other neighborhoods will stop paying taxes. And if we can all do that, or again, participate
Yeah.
in the games that they want us to participate in,
It'd be
then we
interesting.
will end it.
I remember watching something about like Mormons in Mexico, where, they just bought land in Mexico and they just created their own communities out there.
I mean, look, the Amish, they're living their lives too, and they don't even know what's going on sometimes, but it's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
No, I love to go there. I love to go get like meat and
Yeah.
vegetables from them.
It's great
You know,
stuff.
to them, what is organic, but what they do.
Yeah, right.
It's,
They totally live a whole nother lives from us. Like they, it's just we it's like going also back to our roots. It's understanding all that. Like our ancestors weren't completely dumb.
yeah,
Okay.
no, it's great. I always go, if if it was to hit the fan, I always keep it family friendly. um if it was to hit the fan, at least here in Pennsylvania, we could go live with the Amish. At least, we learn their ways.
I'd be
Because,
willing to.
huh?
I'd
Yeah,
be
because
willing
I
to.
mean, they know how to farm. They know how to
Mhm.
live. They know how to live off the land, and they know how to live with the modern society without it letting it influence them. Because that's the
Yeah.
crazy thing. I mean, they live their life, with their values and their beliefs.
Hmm.
They don't push it on nobody else,
Hmm.
and you know, but they still interact with the modern society.
And isn't that beautiful? Like just like what you said right there, not pushing into other people else. And that's why anybody else, like that's why I mentioned in the beginning of this talk is like, don't believe me, look into it for yourself and learn for yourself. I'm just introducing ideas. I'm like a messenger.
Mhm.
And that's all I am. I'm just a messenger to bring new ideas to light. And you don't have to agree with me, but you can understand my point of view and where I'm coming from with this knowledge and look into it. And if there is objectivity, like I am claiming, then I am seeking some sort of agreement with you and some sort of common sense basis to rationale. But yeah, sorry, things are crossing my mind like crazy right now.
Well, I was gonna
But
say, so where
but
can?
the Amish, like for okay, so
Oh,
like no, just real quick, just to mention the other thing because it came back to mind. So like for example, like pushing opinions on other people, that's what politics tends to do, right? Is like pushing my ideas, saying, well, everybody needs to do this, and
mhm.
this is what we're doing. We're gonna call it law. We're gonna call it man's law, and it's not gonna be universal or eternal or apply everywhere all the time, but we're going to call it law and everybody's to follow. And if they don't, they're a threat of violence. So this is how we know that it's an immoral system. This is how we know that authority is such an evil, and how it tricks people into thinking that's okay. So yeah, and I encourage people to learn more about that, of course.
So is it we're getting close. I want to wrap it up. I
Mhm.
think that was a good place to wrap it up. So where can people, since you're talking about that, is there a specific place other than the one great, what was it,
OneGreatWorkNetwork.com.
one great network.com? Other than that, is there anywhere else where people can
Sure,
see your content, or like if they want to reach out to you,
sure.
uh social media, or other than that website?
Sure. So you can look up anywhere on the web, like I'm on BitChute, Brighteon, all the alternative video platforms, Library, Odyssey, which is the same thing, Minds.com, anything you can think of. I'm pretty much on most of them. I don't post regularly on like the social medias, but on the video websites, you'll see I produce a ton of video content, over like 300 videos at this point, and talk about every different topic. If there's still questions you have, you can reach out to me. I'll make videos about it. I'll send you resources as well. Just look up Cory, Nature's the Answer. Cory, Nature's the Answer on anything, and you should get it. If you want to look at the movement that I created so we can help bring these ideas to more people and learn how we can change the world with our efforts amassed, I made a website for that, and that is not my website. It's for everybody.
Mhm.
That's why I made it, and that's why I designate myself from the movement. And so that is nita.one, and that stands for Nature is the Answer. And on that website, if you hit advanced, there's a little button that says learn more. You'll see a ton of resources about natural law. You'll see books by Lysander Spooner from the 1800s, who was an abolitionist and a real anarchist, who talked about natural law, wrote dozens of works about everything, talk about walking the talk. He really talked a lot about freedom. You'll see there's a book called The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose, which is a really great read. There's also a very simplistic book, which is also good for your children, perhaps, called The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. And it really simplifies things into a more common sense perspective, which I also like. The Most Dangerous Superstition, that book I mentioned, goes over literally every single question you might ever have about statism, about natural law. I mean, it doesn't even talk about natural law. I like it because it goes also very common sense based perspective. You don't even have to talk about natural law, but they still know what your rights are because you're given them. Um, And so those books are definitely great reads. It's all on the website there. It's nita.one/advanced for that page. And there's also presentations for natural law. There's about 3 in total, like 3 different parts. And there's even a study guide. I even made summary sheets for every single topic in natural law. So if you want to learn more, there's plenty of ways you can. Also, our show that we did, the Right Reagan and I'm going to put that on nita.one/learn. That's the link you can go to for that, because that is, direct learning from other people and asking questions to them. Because I think people need to learn the knowledge also in action, and saying, well, how do I bring this to other people? What does it look like? I'm showing people how it looks like when you do bring that knowledge to other people, because some people might not know how to teach it to others once they do acquire it. So there's many aspects to look at, but you'll find plenty of content everywhere if you look around. Thank you so much. I
Yeah, and
appreciate it.
well, you send that to me. I'll put it in the description.
Okay.
And like I'm the Right Rican, and I will post this on. I just usually do YouTube and Rumble. I might have to start doing some of the other sites too, just because you never know. You, especially with YouTube, you never know what they let you post or whatnot.
For sure.
But that's why I do Rumble. And so like I said, that I'm also on social media. You can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, and Gab. And so I keep promoting Gab, even though I don't have a lot of followers on there, but I like Gab as the
Yeah.
ultimate, just because the fact that they, when it comes to free speech, they're definitely top of the game when it comes to social media. So
Sure.
anyways, well, have a good one, everyone. I'm gonna leave it right there.
Thank you.